Good morning, FCF. It's day 6 in our journey looking at clothing and situations in Scripture to deal with clothing. And I'm going to kind of take you back to the book of Genesis, chapter 37. And by the way, I'll just say this. If you read Genesis 37 through 50, you're going to meet one of the most remarkable characters in all of Scripture. His name is Joseph. But his start, when we first meet him, he's in a really difficult situation. So I'm going to start in Genesis 37. And I'll start in verse 2. This is the account of Jacob. Jacob was Joseph's father. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. So he's ratting out his older brothers. Now Israel, which is another name for Jacob. So now Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. Bad pattern. Because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made a richly ornamented robe for him. When his brothers saw that the father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word about him. And I'll stop right there. So here we have a doting parent who is so self-absorbed and so unaware that his other children need his love equally and need it to be equally expressed, that he makes this evidently spectacular coat. And so picture this. Here's the youngest of the family, and he's sporting this spectacular coat. They're going around in their work clothes, evidently. And then the youngster is giving bad reports on them to top it all. So is it any wonder that they hated him? It's a terrible thing, though, because this hatred was completely unnecessary. It's tragic when there's divisions in families amongst children, ill feelings, because they feel cheated or they feel that one parent favors them over another. This is something that doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And you might be as an adult thinking back to the family you grew up in where you felt, whether it was accurate or not, you felt like maybe mom or maybe dad just didn't quite feel the same about you as they felt about your brother or your sister. And that might have caused you to feel a little bit envious, maybe a little bit angry, maybe a little bit worse than that, maybe like Joseph's brothers, a little bit of hatred toward them. If the Spirit of God is bringing some of that up in you, this is a good time to make sure that you confess all that to God, get it all cleansed out. Don't let any root of bitterness remain in you. But more importantly, for we that might be parents and still have young children, be very careful. Even though we have to treat each child differently, they're distinct, they're different, we have to treat them still fairly. And we have to find the language that lets them know they are equally loved. And what we don't want to do is ever do anything that gives an impression that we have favoritism for one child over another. Be very careful, because this is an easy thing to have occur, because the truth is some kids click easier with their parents. Some of us as parents, we're vulnerable. If that kid is somewhat like us, we'll tend to like that kid more. Now, there's a human understanding about that. There's human normalcy about that. But loving the child, and we're loving the children equally, is something we can do even if we click a little bit better or easier with one child or another, and we have to almost overcompensate to show extra love to the other children. We don't put a fancy coat on them like Jacob did to his son Joseph. The story gets really bad after this. The brothers become so angry and envious, they literally sell their brother into slavery. And the next 13 years of Joseph's life are an absolute nightmare, but the rest of the story is a really great one. So I hope this little journey we've taken looking at clothing, biblical clothing and clothing situations, will strengthen you, build you up, and just turn your heart more toward Christ. Thank you so much.